Claridge's, the most luxurious hotel in the heart of Mayfair, once the scene of Britain's most elite gatherings, suddenly became ground zero for a media storm unprecedented in modern royal history. What seemed like a simple book launch, where champagne glasses sparkled under chandeliers and polite applause echoed in an aristocratic atmosphere, was abruptly shattered by a sentence as cold as a blade, as sharp as a sword drawn in the midst of a silent banquet. Prince William did not respect my mother, and that I will not forgive. The speaker was no stranger. It was Tom Parker Bowles, the biological son of Queen Camilla. In front of the press, before hundreds of stunned eyes and thousands of recorders waiting for every word, Tom chose not to stay silent. He didn't just openly challenge a prince. He directly placed the honor of the British royal family on the operating table. No diplomacy, no hesitation, just a deep cut into an already fractured relationship between two bloodlines, Windsor and Parker Bowles. All of Britain held its breath. The world was stunned, because Tom was not merely defending his mother. It was as if he were activating a political bomb, meticulously prepared by Camilla, the woman once branded a homewrecker of the royal marriage, who now dared to reach into the sacred forbidden zone, the line of succession to the throne. After all, everyone knows William is the future of the United Kingdom. He is the embodiment of Princess Diana's legacy, the bridge between the monarchy's glorious past and its fragile future. And when someone of outside blood dares to publicly attack that image, one cannot help but ask, was this truly a spontaneous, emotional outburst, or the first calculated move in a power-shifting master plan? Insiders in London immediately drew connections, from Camilla's quiet presence beside the king at key events where William was notably absent, from rumors of a circle of loyalists she was secretly forming within the palace, to the fact that Tom, a renowned food critic who once stayed far from politics, now appeared as a veiled spokesperson for his mother. Every detail became suspicious, every silence a signal. And to those who understand royal intrigue, this was no longer a mere family squabble. It was a warning bell for a brewing internal war. It was no surprise when Princess Anne, the cold, unshakable guardian of royal tradition, immediately took action. Alongside William, she is believed to have convened a secret meeting at Sandringham, once the power base during Queen Elizabeth II's reign. This move made clear that Tom Parker Bowles' words had pushed their patience to the breaking point, and perhaps even the final threshold of peace within the royal household. So the bigger question is, what is Camilla really doing in the shadows? Is she quietly constructing a second monarchy, one where her children are treated as true princes and princesses, where Windsor blood is diluted, and where power is controlled by those never chosen by the people? If that's the case, then what Tom said at Claridge's was merely the starting point, a deliberate spark, a calculated trap to force William's hand, to push him into a corner where he must choose, suffer in silence or step into battle, triggering a public royal war that could shake the entire nation. What do you think? Is this a simple family disagreement, or the tip of a dark conspiracy masterminded by Camilla herself? Is Tom Parker Bowles a victim of emotion, or a well-placed pawn in his powerful mother's game? Leave your comment below. Press 1 if you support William, the rightful heir and symbol of traditional royal values, or press 0 if you stand with Tom, the son who refuses to let his mother be disrespected, even by a future king. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the secrets behind the walls of Buckingham Palace. Because sometimes the truth is hidden beneath layers of polite velvet, and only those sharp enough can recognize who the real puppet master is in this royal game of chess. Under the soft yellow lights of the Windsor Banquet Hall, where fake toasts blend with the clinking of crystal glasses in lavish but cold parties, a new face suddenly began appearing frequently beside King Charles III and Queen Camilla. It was Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's biological son, known in culinary circles as a sophisticated food critic, but never regarded as a significant figure in royal power circles. However, Tom's increasingly prominent presence has led many to wonder what is really going on behind the palace curtain. It all started with what seemed like a small detail, the coronation menu. While preparing for one of the most significant events of his life, King Charles, a man known for his fondness for traditional British cuisine, unexpectedly approved Tom to advise on the official menu for the ceremony. This change surprised many within the royal household and the media, since all coronation rituals had previously been determined by long-standing palace advisors. But this time an outsider, not of royal blood, was given a special role, and it could not simply be a coincidence. It turns out, behind that decision was a silent strategy orchestrated by Camilla. With her trademark cunning, Camilla didn't bring her son in through the front door, but chose to use the side entrance under the label of royal cuisine, a field where Tom had influence and less scrutiny. But no one expected this was merely the opening move of a deeper strategy. From culinary consultant, Tom quickly began appearing in meetings regarding royal estates, particularly the Duchy of Cornwall, one of the British monarchy's largest assets, currently under King Charles's control since William became the Prince of Wales. While the public was preoccupied with Catherine's health recovery, Camilla quietly pushed forward a project on sustainable and organic agriculture, which sounded like a harmless green initiative but was, in fact, a golden ticket for Tom to step into the core of royal power. Camilla skillfully persuaded Charles that Tom, with his knowledge of food and clean farming, was the ideal candidate to oversee part of the development project for the Cornwall estates. Some close advisors initially expressed concern, but they were swiftly pushed out of the inner circle through Camilla's soft yet weighty words. She even invoked environmental protection, a top concern of Charles, as the perfect cover for embedding her son deeper into the royal property system. Soon after, Tom was permitted to oversee a test project on a clean farming plot in Cornwall as an independent advisor. And in internal meetings, he was increasingly seen sitting next to duchy financial leaders, discussing long-term sustainable development strategies. This unsettled several long-standing royal insiders, because if Tom were allowed to help manage royal assets, he would not only be handling hundreds of millions of pounds, but also officially become part of the power machine, despite not having a drop of royal blood. And that's exactly what alarmed many. Tom's infiltration into the royal asset system was not merely about personal ambition. It was clearly part of a larger plan by Camilla, a plan to protect her family's standing within a monarchy gradually transitioning power. As King Charles weakens and Prince William prepares to ascend the throne, Camilla understands well that she needs to build an internal fortress to guard against the looming isolation. And Tom, with his flexibility and outside influence, is the optimal card to play. The problem is, in a monarchy that still bears the scars from Princess Diana, who was cast aside for not fitting the mold, the sudden rise of Tom, someone completely outside royal lineage, feels like a blow to the principles of inheritance and legitimacy. The idea that an outsider could gain access to traditional assets is something many blue-blooded nobles see as a real threat. One member of the House of Commons quietly remarked, "If Tom is allowed to manage the duchy, who will be next? Do the rules of inheritance still mean anything, or are they now just a joke in Camilla's hands?" Even more striking, internal reports indicate there is a simmering resistance from William's advisors. Though not public, they are closely monitoring Camilla and Tom's moves, especially as William attempts to maintain neutrality for the monarchy amidst ongoing media scandals. A source close to Clarence House said, "William doesn't want an internal war, but he also won't let anyone dismantle the royal family's traditional structure." Meanwhile, Camilla continued to play the role of the devoted wife, the supportive mother, and the queen consort standing behind the king. But her calculated moves told a different story. Camilla was not just the woman who weathered the storm to reach the throne. She was quietly building a new empire, one in which Tom could become an uncrowned successor. The question is, can a royal family already bearing so many scars endure another power transplant like this? As long as King Charles is alive, everything remains under control. But if one day he is no longer here, and William is forced to take the throne under fragile circumstances, then what will Tom's role be? An unofficial advisor? An influential outsider? Or the one paving the way for Camilla's deeper schemes? In this chess game full of ambition, perhaps the most frightening question is, has Camilla gone too far? And is the United Kingdom strong enough to withstand such a silent conspiracy from within the very walls of the palace? Under the heavy air of a closed-door meeting at Buckingham Palace, Princess Anne, the woman long dubbed the silent pillar of the Windsor dynasty, finally spoke up. Not with flowery words, not with regal airs, but with a cold decisiveness forged through thousands of public duties she had carried out over more than half a century. To Anne, any insult to royal blood, whether direct or indirect, is never just a joke. And this time the attack came from Camilla, the woman she never truly accepted, and Tom Parker Bowles, her son. Anne had remained silent for weeks since Tom's critical article appeared in a mainstream newspaper. But when senior advisors realized the piece was not merely a personal opinion, but part of a systematic media campaign, she had no reason to stay quiet any longer. As someone who has represented the royal family over 20,000 times at public events, the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, and a witness to the downfall of many royal icons, Anne understood that an attack on the younger generation of royals, like Princess Charlotte, was, in essence, a strike at the future of the monarchy itself. That is why, in a private meeting at Clarence House, Princess Anne decided to confront Camilla directly. No pleasantries, no avoidance. She brought with her a collection of documents, letters, and reports her private team had quietly gathered over the past few weeks. Among them were troubling details about Tom Parker Bowles, from secret meetings with media tycoons in New York to a plan to build his public image as a reform-minded people's representative. Even an internal memo drafted by Tom's close advisory group had been leaked, revealing a long-term goal of diminishing the roles of royal members who were ineffective in media, a not-so-subtle jab at Princess Anne herself and even Crown Prince William. Camilla said nothing at the time, but her eyes, usually calm and composed, could not hide the flicker of unease, because she knew that if this evidence were to leak, it would not only damage Tom's personal reputation, but also raise serious questions about her own role and integrity in public service, as someone now bearing the title of Queen. Anne didn't stop there. She asked the core question directly. Is Tom acting on his own, or has someone encouraged him to believe he has the right to interfere with royal standards? In that awkward silence, Camilla gave no answer. But Anne didn't need a confession. For in the politics of the royal family, silence is often the clearest confirmation of all. The atmosphere in the room became weighty, as if all courtly politeness had been brushed aside. Anne continued, this time not to accuse, but to declare. She emphasized that the royal family is not a stage for those seeking to exploit fame or rewrite long-standing values through media manipulation. The Windsor dynasty's legacy, Anne said, was built on blood, tears, and the silent sacrifices of generations. It is not for those who only care about personal gain. Camilla listened, her eyes no longer able to maintain the steadiness they usually held. Deep down, she knew she was facing a woman who not only represented history, but also embodied a kind of unyielding, uncompromising power, something she had never truly encountered since entering the royal family. What made this confrontation special was not its intensity, but the deeper reason behind it. For Anne, this battle wasn't just about protecting Princess Charlotte or preserving William's reputation. It was about defending the fundamental definition of legitimacy within the royal family. If anyone, even the Queen's son, could assume the right to shape the monarchy's future simply because they had public support, then what was the monarchy but a shell being manipulated? However, within that very firmness, a quiet shadow of a question began to emerge. Was Anne being too strict, too doctrinal in believing that only those of direct royal blood were worthy of shaping the royal legacy? Perhaps in a world rapidly changing with media, social networks, and modernization pressures, Camilla's attempts, despite her non-noble origins, to embed her people into the system were simply a natural response for survival. But Anne did not buy into those arguments. She believed that if the British royal family existed merely to appease public opinion, then it was no longer a monarchy. It was a performance funded by the public. And in that game, people like Tom Parker Bowles were not royal protectors, but opportunists. In the days following the Clarence House meeting, Anne continued her duties. She appeared at public events with her usual composed expression, revealing nothing. But behind that silence was a clear message. She had acted. She had delivered a warning. And if needed, she would not hesitate to act again, for the crown, for honor, and for the sacred promise she made to her late mother. Would that resolve be enough to save the royal family from the ambitions rising beneath the surface? Or would it be the start of a long confrontation between the old generation and the new forces, where bloodline was no longer the sole determining factor? The answer remains unclear. But one thing is certain: Anne had stepped out of the shadows, no longer a supporting figure in palace politics. She had officially entered the game as the final guardian of Windsor's legacy. It was from the very moment Tom Parker Bowles arrogantly hurled insults at William during the Windsor banquet that the atmosphere among royal factions shifted from simmering tension to overt confrontation. William, eyes dark with fury, left the banquet in silence. But inside him, a storm was brewing. No one in that room could have foreseen that a single sentence from Tom, thought to be a smug joke, would ignite one of the most silent yet brutal purges within the royal family since Diana's death. The very next morning, William summoned his closest advisors to Clarence's house. No longer the courteous, smiling prince standing behind his father, William now emerged as a true leader, cold, decisive, and ready to confront. He ordered a full audit of all financial transactions related to Tom Parker Bowles, including investments in royal real estate, heritage conservation projects, and shady charitable funds Tom had once received. Within days, a picture reeking of money and power began to unfold, sending chills through William. Tom had not only exploited his status as the Queen's son to interfere in royal land redevelopment projects, but had also secretly held stakes in a network of shell companies linked to real estate tycoons in Dubai and Hong Kong. Worse still, some of these transactions had passed through trust funds originally set up by Queen Elizabeth to protect generational royal assets. For William, this was not just corruption. It was an insult to the pride and legacy of the entire Windsor dynasty. William knew he couldn't act alone, and the only person he could trust now was Princess Anne, the iron-willed woman utterly loyal to traditional values, and someone who had long seen Camilla as an outsider encroaching on the throne. Their meeting took place quietly at Sandringham, once a beloved retreat of the late Queen. No ceremony, no guards, just two royals sitting face-to-face in a vintage wooden room amidst the scent of candles and the soft ticking of a grandfather clock. Anne's gaze sharpened as William recounted the latest findings. She nodded slightly and whispered, "It's time." They laid out a plan. No explosions, no scandals, just a quiet war, executed step by step. In his capacity as Prince of Wales, William ordered a review of all high-ranking positions that Camilla had quietly filled. Her trusted advisors, including figures in media and household management, were reassigned to less influential roles or forced into early retirement under the pretense of restructuring for the new era. Simultaneously, independent audit firms were brought in to conduct routine evaluations of financial matters related to royal estates. Every single move was carefully calculated to avoid triggering a chain reaction from Camilla's faction. But internally, everyone understood. A purge was underway. Piece by piece, the power structure Camilla had built over nearly 2 decades was being dismantled, quietly but without mercy. In the reports submitted to William, several of Tom's so-called culinary research grants turned out to be disguised investments in luxury holiday villas. Some individuals who had appeared alongside Camilla at charity events were closely tied to companies exploiting public land policies. Meanwhile, Anne continued her discreet efforts to rally Queen Elizabeth's former advisors, rekindling memories of a royal family rooted in integrity and service to the people, not one manipulated by questionable personal ties. Day by day, the gaps in Camilla's power network became more visible. Calls went unanswered. Internal requests were delayed. And most of all, Tom Parker Bowles began to feel the chill around him, from the media, from the aristocracy, and even from those who once supported his mother. William did not stop. He had learned from his mother, Princess Diana, that hesitation kills justice. Every decision, every move he made now carried the weight of history as a man trying to preserve the last remaining soul of the British monarchy. And when Princess Anne placed her hand on William's shoulder, looked him in the eye and said, "Your mother would be proud," it wasn't just encouragement. It was confirmation that a righteous battle had officially begun. But the biggest question still hung over Buckingham Palace. Was the alliance between William and Anne, Two generations, two seemingly opposite figures, strong enough to stop Camilla and the forces slowly devouring the Windsor legacy? Or would they all be swept into an inescapable spiral, where the throne became nothing more than a facade for hidden schemes? The silence in the palace at that moment was the clearest sign of the storm to come. Cracks begin with suspicion, but true collapse only happens when naked truth is laid bare. And this time, it was a fatal blow to the web of power Queen Camilla had spent decades quietly weaving. It all began when an independent financial audit was conducted on the royal estate system. Initially a routine review, the numbers soon spoke a truth that left even the king's most loyal advisors speechless. Annabel Elliot, Camilla's biological sister, had been living for years completely rent-free in a royal estate owned by King Charles in Gloucestershire. Not only that, she had regularly received a generous salary from public funds for her role as an interior design advisor, a virtually fictitious position, unchecked and without performance assessments. When the truth hit the press, outrage spread across the UK. The media dubbed it blatant profiteering, while the public was furious that their tax money had funded the lavish lifestyle of non-royals. Buckingham Palace had no choice but to announce that Annabel Elliot would immediately cease all roles related to the royal family. In reality, it was an unspoken expulsion, cold but necessary. When Camilla received the news, she was reportedly pale and nearly collapsed. She had not only lost a trusted confidant, but also her right hand, the partner who had helped her maneuver the royal household for years. That seismic shock triggered a wave of internal purges. Camilla's closest advisors, from media intermediaries to her private event coordinators, were gradually stripped of their positions. The public and the press began scrutinizing every personal, financial, and influential connection surrounding Camilla. In the shadows of the palace, whispers spread that it was William and Princess Anne who had quietly fueled this purge. They were no longer willing to turn a blind eye to Camilla's backstage power. But the collapse didn't end there. Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's son, who had long benefited from countless unspoken privileges tied to his mother's status, also became a target of media investigation. Independent probes exposed shady connections between his high-end restaurant chain and suspicious funding from noble circles. Tom wasn't charged with a crime, but the scandal was enough to derail his career. TV contracts were canceled. Invitations to prestigious events disappeared. Suddenly, the heir with no title found himself trapped in a nightmare called soft exile. And Camilla? Under immense pressure from the media and the cold stares from within the royal family, she was forced to retreat. All public events she had planned for the month were canceled without explanation. Receptions, christenings, charity auctions, all quietly vanished from the royal schedule. Camilla disappeared from public view for weeks. Paparazzi, instead of capturing her familiar image in elegant gowns, could now only snap photos of an aging woman, face hidden behind dark glasses, huddled in the back of a car, avoiding every lens. Worse still, King Charles no longer had the strength to protect her. His illness made every public appearance a battle. In his weakest moments, he could only sit silently, saying nothing as he watched his wife become isolated. William remained silent, but his coldness toward his stepmother was unmistakable. And Anne, who had always placed royal honor and tradition above all else, seemed to have found the perfect moment to restore the values she believed Camilla had distorted. Now, with the curtain of power fallen, Queen Camilla was no longer the queen without a crown she had been for many years, nor the woman pulling the strings behind the scenes. She was left alone, surrounded only by names from the past who had either turned their backs on her or been cast out. The press described her as a ghost within Buckingham Palace, once a master manipulator, now hiding silently in the shadows, hoping for the public's anger to subside. The question haunting everyone: can Camilla recover from this defeat, or is it all over forever? Does she still have a chance to regain her position, or is she now just the sigh of a queen who has lost everything? And is this downfall the first step toward a sweeping purge within the British royal family, with Camilla as merely the first pawn to fall? What happens next may not only determine Camilla's fate, but the very standing of the monarchy in the eyes of the British public. Princess Anne and Prince William didn't need to speak to the media. They didn't need to call for loyalty, nor wave banners to declare victory. What they chose was silence, deliberate, icy, and full of message. Through a series of discreet yet surgically precise actions, they gradually tightened the essential links of the monarchy, building a solid wall that shut out Camilla and her son, Tom Parker Bowles, from the levers of royal influence. No one was dethroned. No punishing royal statement was issued. But everything that had once constituted Camilla's soft power, from public appearances, magazine covers, to her sway in royal committees, was systematically stripped away. She became a faint shadow, present only at ceremonies where absence was impossible. And even then, the media's attention no longer sought her out as a central figure. As for Tom, who once reveled in the royal spotlight, his return to food criticism seemed like a personal career shift. But in reality, it was the inevitable outcome of a masterfully orchestrated chess game. No more honored invitations to diplomatic dinners. No more seats in the front rows of prestigious events. Television projects once quietly backed by the palace gradually disappeared from primetime. From being expected to inherit his mother's influence, Tom was now just a middle-aged gentleman commenting on sauces and cooking techniques on cable TV, something that, in the public's eyes, had nothing to do with a thousand-year-old empire. What's most striking is that none of these changes sparked any public scandal. No arguments on television, no leaked letters, no accusations from Camilla or Tom. That's precisely what made Anne and William's handling of the situation chillingly brilliant. They knew that if they wanted to protect the royal legacy Queen Elizabeth II had left behind, they couldn't fight with swords or words, but with patience, with strategy, and by letting their opponents slip from the stage before even realizing they had been removed from the game. And as that silence lingered, a message without words resounded louder than ever. It was a declaration that the British royal family may endure criticism, may face crises, but will never bow to personal ambition, especially ambition that runs counter to the honor of the Windsor bloodline. No one said it aloud, but everyone understood. Camilla, with all that she had once desired, was ultimately allowed to only stand at the edge of power. And Tom, though he bore the name Parker Bowles, would never be permitted to set foot on the steps of the throne. The next generation, George, Charlotte, and Louis, would grow up in an environment carefully purified, no longer shadowed by vague threats from peripheral ties to the monarchy. That is the greatest gift Anne and William have left for the future. Yet, within that silent victory, a lingering question still drifted through the ancient stone walls of Buckingham Palace. Did this subtle elimination truly strengthen the royal family from within, or did it only deepen the cracks in the family's foundation? Because even though Anne and William chose not to confront matters publicly, those involved could not ignore the growing chill that began to envelop royal dinners. Christmas gatherings that were once complete were now just memories. Camilla's eyes, whenever they'd met William's gaze, looked increasingly distant and estranged. Tom no longer mentioned the palace in interviews, but sometimes in his laughter there was a faint catch, as if a door had been shut forever in front of him. Perhaps, in a family that nearly fractured under selfishness and deceit, coldness is the price that must be paid for stability. William understands this, and Anne, the woman who had witnessed from the very beginning the collapse of Charles and Diana, surely understands as well. They did not choose division. They chose the survival of the monarchy, even if it meant sacrificing a part of familiarity, affection, and blood. Now, when the people of Britain look up to the Buckingham Palace balcony on grand occasions, they no longer see Camilla standing beside the king. They see only William, Catherine, George, and sometimes even Anne, the central figures, as if making a solemn promise that the royal family has returned to its rightful axis. No more outsiders disrupting the flow of tradition. No one left capable of steering the ship off course, a ship that had once nearly sunk. That silent victory, though never recorded in writing or broadcast live on television, still echoes like an unspoken declaration. The British monarchy remains steadfast, after all. And if anyone ever thought they could use relationships to wedge themselves into that empire, the lesson now is painfully clear. True royal blood does not need to shout to be heard. And so, amid the undercurrents that once threatened to wash away the monarchy's very foundations, Princess Anne and Prince William chose a path of no words, quiet, yet deeply effective. Without dramatic proclamations or loud gestures, they gradually pushed Camilla and Tom's influence out of the center of power, defending the stability of the crown with calm determination, a signature of the next generation's leadership. But is this truly a lasting victory, or merely a temporary veil over cracks that have already taken root within the family? Stay with us in the next videos as we uncover the secrets never before revealed inside the Windsor household. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss a single development.